You know how it goes. First things first. Um, just brief introduction of yourself and your role in the business world, and any description of any products or services you offer.
Okay. Well, my name is Jim Parker. I specialize in helping people buy and sell businesses. I've been doing it, oh gosh, for nearly 25 years now. And yeah, so that's all I do is I help people buy and sell businesses.
I see. So how did you get into this, I guess, area of like buying and selling businesses?
Oh, that's a strange story. So I had a company before this that unfortunately didn't it crashed because of September 11th. And at the time I was trying to find a new career. I had majored in communications. I didn't like what I had majored in college. I was more interested in business. I love business. But because I was an entrepreneur, I had owned a business for about 7 or 8 years, and I was a young kid at the time when I got into this. Now, can we start all over, Austin? Can we start completely from the beginning?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Okay, so back all the way to square
yeah,
one then.
I'll do better.
Okay. No, no, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. This is totally good. Okay, so then starting over again. So
Yeah.
could you first introduce yourself and explain your role in the business sector, an overview of like what your service you offer, and then perhaps explain how you got into this field.
Okay, great. Well, my name is Jim Parker. I've been helping people sell businesses for nearly 25 years now. I started my own company back in 2010, Boss Group International. I've got two partners in that company. I own 51%. They each own 24.5%. And that's what we do. We help people sell businesses. I love what I do. I find it so rewarding. As far as how I got into the industry, it's kind of strange that I owned a company prior to this, and we had it was a pretty successful company. We had offices in Orlando, Las Vegas, Hawaii. We were doing about $2.5 million in sales, and I think I went. I think that I became a partner in that company. I think in the late '90s, maybe '96, '97, and then September 11th happened. 80% of our clients were Japanese, and the Prime Minister of Japan came out on September 12th and said, "Don't fly to the United States anymore." So our business just evaporated overnight. It just disappeared. Fax machine was ringing off the hook, canceled order, canceled order. And, they weren't going to fly because they were worried about, what had happened with September 11th. And at that time, we didn't know if there was going to be more attacks or anything like that. So it's not like we could call up the clients and say, "We'll give you better service, we'll give you a better price." I mean, it was done. It was completely done. So when that company crashed, I was looking around at that time, like, what am I going to do? What I went to college for? I no longer had interest in that. I had fallen in love with business, but I was in a position, Brian, where I felt like I knew a lot of things about business, but like in a general sense, not in a sense where a major corporation would hire me to be an accountant or hire me to be a marketing person or a management person. I just had a lot of experience in each sector, but nothing that I think thought a corporation would hire. So I was really disappointed. I wanted to go back into business for myself down the road, but I needed to regroup. And one of my
Right.
friends at the time was doing really, really well in selling residential real estate, and he was making a lot of money. He really enjoyed it. And I talked to him about it, and he convinced me to do it. I did it because I just didn't see myself falling in love with doing it, because I'm not the kind of guy that's gonna be like, "Oh, do you love the foyer?" and da 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 da. I never had excitement about houses at all.
Right.
But I looked at it and I thought, you can make good money. It's up to you. You have unlimited income, and no matter, you can just push yourself and work really hard and work really smart, and you can get to a level and you have unlimited income, and that's what I liked about it. So I went to real estate school to get my real estate license to sell houses, and in real estate school they talked about business brokerage, literally for about 30 seconds. Because in the state of Florida, you have to have a real estate license to sell businesses. Don't ask me why, but you do. And he talked about it for 30 seconds. I was like, what's that? And I ran up to him on a break. I'm like, "What's business brokerage?" He goes, "Oh, you don't want to get into that. You don't want to do that." And so, anyways, when I got done with the class and I got my license, I went and interviewed with the company that my friend worked for. And one of the questions they asked was a typical question that employer might ask in an interview. They said, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" And I didn't want to lie. I just said, to be honest with you, I see myself transitioning into selling businesses. And the broker's like, well, why don't you do that right now with us? And I said, okay. So I became a business broker that day. Brian, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about selling
Mm,
businesses. I didn't have a mentor. There was nobody else in the company that sold businesses. But it was good because I had a lot of small business experience, so I could pull from that.
right.
And then I ended up meeting saw a couple brokers that helped me out in the beginning. They worked for another company, and I would call them up and ask them questions from time to time. And I started doing research, and I don't know, 25, almost 25 years later, I'm still doing it, and I love it.
Right. So it's just like an opportunity that kind of came to you and you just took it based on the instance, I guess.
Yeah,
Right?
Brian, you hit around in the head, and I think I think that young kids a lot of times they know certain industries that are out there, doctor, engineer, plumber, whatever you want to do. But there's so many industries out there that kind of ride under the radar that most people don't know about. Like a lot of people don't even know business brokers exist. There's a whole
Yeah.
industry of helping people sell small businesses. And going back to your point about doors opening, I think that that's one of the biggest things that people your age should realize is that doors open and you don't realize maybe not those doors are going to be a big thing. You never expected your life to go down that path, and you just got to open those doors. Just open them, go through them, and it might
Right.
not work out, and you just pivot. But the more the more doors that you go through, the more the opportunities are there for you.
Right. Makes sense. So I guess kind of like on this note about like your career path. So what do you find rewarding about I guess business and business brokerage? Because you mentioned that you found it like rewarding, business and what you do now currently.
Why do I find it rewarding?
Yeah, yeah. Like what do you find rewarding? Like what makes this so I guess meaningful for you?
I, you know, Brian, it's everything. It's everything. It takes so many different skill sets to do to sell businesses, and I really enjoy that. One minute you're looking at financials and analyzing financials, and then you're also being creative and you're talking to people, and and I could go on and on about all the aspects of business brokerage. But one of the biggest things that I like is I like building relationships with business owners. First of all, I think business owners are I love their attitude and their personality of most small business owners. I like that. Hey, most small business owners have an attitude of, hey, I can do anything, and they have a lot of confidence, and I think the successful small business owners, which is the arena that I'm currently working in, is that they probably crashed at some point in their life, so they're humbled, and
Mm.
so they're successful, but they're humble, they're good people, and I love building that relationship. And this is more times than not the biggest financial transaction of their life, so they really count on you to do a good job for them. And I like that. I like that responsibility, and I love building the relationships with the sellers. And then when the buyers working with the buyers, not all buyers are great, not all sellers are great, but what I try to do is I try to look at, hey, when I take on a listing, I want not only a good business and a business that's priced reasonably, but I also look for a business owner that is likable and trustworthy, and I feel good about. I've turned down listings actually where it was a good business, but the business owner, I just didn't see myself, like I was like, oh, I don't really want to talk to this guy for the next 6 or 7 months. And every
Yeah,
time
yeah,
I
yeah.
call him, I'd be like, oh, I gotta call so and so. So I stopped working with those kind of people. So and then with the buyers, I feel the same thing with the buyers when they're looking at a business. It's important usually for the seller that the buyer is going to take care of their employees, take care of their suppliers, take care of their customers. Like a big, because the business owners sometimes is, own the business for 20, 30 years. And, they build relationships with these people. And, so it's important that the buyer has a good personality as well. So what I like doing is good selling good businesses where with good people at the end of the day.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense actually. I mean, I think someone else mentioned this as well that I talked to, but the part about building the relationship and having the responsibility with the people you work with is very rewarding for them. So yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So I guess back on your personal experience again. So throughout, I guess your years in the business world, do you have any like interesting or memorable stories like to share that perhaps have some kind of lessons that you could share with everyone?
Memorable experiences. Yeah, maybe I can pick some from my past business history, and then maybe something from that I'm doing currently or more recently. So I think we were pretty smart when we did our first business. We were actually a wedding videography company. And we did wedding videos. My background was television production, so I knew, television production pretty well. We used low end, low end broadcast quality equipment, and then we had the knowledge and experience on how to use that. And at that time, when we were doing those wedding videos, and we started out in the mid to late '90s, we ate up the market pretty quickly because most back then most videographers were weekend warriors. They had a job and they would do it on the weekend for extra money, and they weren't really experienced in actually doing a good job of editing and shooting and things like that. And so we ate up the market pretty quickly, and that's how we started. And then we started realizing that there's a hierarchy in the wedding industry where the bride will book certain things at certain times. And first thing they'll do is they'll look for a place to get married. And then from there they kind of work down. And videography was kind of in the middle. And above that was photography. And we were like, hey, we need to move up the food chain a little bit because we can bring in the work on the photography and also feed the video at the same time. And photography and video are so related that it wouldn't phase a couple that is coming in looking. So we ended up selling almost um, every package that we sold would include photography and video. So we like immediately increased our revenue greatly,
Mm.
because now we're doing double the work, and there's actually more money in photography than there is in videography. And then the other thing we did later on down the road, we were like, maybe we should go down one. And we realized that for most couples, the and I hate to say it because I don't want to sound sexist, but for most couples, at least back then, the guy would only show up really for the wedding site, the photography, and the video, and the bride would take over most of the other planning and things like that. The only thing that the guy was typically in charge of, on his own, was getting his tuxedos and getting them for his groomsmen and stuff. So we said, you know what, let's start offering tuxedos. And so we started offering tuxedos, and what was nice is the couple would come in to look at the photography and the video. We'd book them on that, and we'd say, "Oh, by the way," we turn to the groom and say, "By the way, have you got your tuxedo yet?" And they never did because I was farther down the food chain. And they're like, "No." And we'll say, "We can do it right now. If you've got 15, 20 minutes, we can measure you, we can fit you, we can pick out a tuxedo, and it doesn't cost you anything." And for the guy, he would be like, "That's great. I don't have to do anything. I can just do it right here, and I'm done, and it's not going to cost me anything." And so we did that. And in the wedding industry, you typically give the groom the tuxedo for free because you're getting the tuxedos for the groomsmen and the father of the bride, the father of the groom, and then the ring bearer and things like that. So you'd sell like maybe 10 other tuxedos. And we didn't even have that. We had maybe 100 pairs of shoes, maybe 100 pair of shirts. We had a few jackets, but mainly what we did was we outsourced it. We would book it, and then we would order the tuxedos from a wholesaler in town. And we would drive up there, pick up the tuxedos, bring them back, and give them to the groomsmen. They would come back on a Monday, drop them off, and then we would go up, drop those tuxedos, pick up the next week's tuxedos. So it was a great add-on. It was a great add-on situation, both with the photography and the tuxedos.
I
That's
see, I
probably
see.
too long of a story, Brian, but
No, no, that's good. That's a good story. I guess it shows like what, look for opportunities, like look for areas that naturally to expand. Yeah. Okay. So then I guess you kind of touched on this already, but lessons you'd perhaps be willing to share with young people or aspiring entrepreneurs. Doesn't have to be people in business particularly, just maybe just people my age, so around 17, 18.
okay, great. I think the first thing I want to say is in life, I didn't learn this until I was older. In life, you don't compete with anybody but yourself. And don't always be looking around and being like, oh, that person's more successful than me, or I'm more successful than that person. We all have our own skills and talents that we were born with, our own, upbringings. We all have our own problems and strengths and weaknesses. And, I don't think you should judge other people, and yet you shouldn't look at other people and be like, oh, they're more successful than me. You're not competing against anybody in this world except for yourself, and push yourself to be the best in whatever you possibly can be. I think another big thing is perseverance. This is a huge one for me. Is in my life, I've been knocked down so many times. First company, we ended up going bankrupt because of September 11th, and because of that, I had finding personal financial problems, which led to a divorce, and just a lot of things in my life. You get punched in the nose, and the best thing to do is just you get back up, shake yourself off, and get back up. And when I say that, I'm not saying like you get punched in the nose and you immediately like jump back up and go, "Hey, I'm ready to go. I'm going to fight back." You got to take some time to mourn, or get in touch with your feelings, but don't make it too long. You got to brush yourself up, get back, and swing back.
Right.
I grew up in the '80s, Brian. Rocky was a huge movie back then, and I always think my life is kind of like Rocky, where you just get up, hit the nose, fall down, get up, get hit again, and that's going to happen in life. Don't let that discourage you, and that's going to make you stronger, and you're going to learn lessons from it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, life certainly has its hardships, so being able to persevere through it, I think, is very important. Especially
Brian,
like with it.
Brian, can I give one more, because I think it's really important
Yeah, go
too.
ahead.
I think another thing is learning off of other people. So like in business brokerage, I know a lot of great brokers throughout the United States and Canada. They're really talented guys and women. And I love talking to them one on one. What are you doing? What are you doing this? How are you doing this? What are you doing there? And they're picking my brain and I'm picking their brain, and we're sharing ideas. I don't look at them as competitors. I mean, we're not competitors, and we make each other stronger. We make each other better. If you try to have this attitude of I'll figure it out on my own, or I know everything, because I've been doing this for 25 years and I've still learned so much from other business brokers, and I think they learn a lot from me. But I think if you have this attitude of, hey, I know everything, or I'm learning on my own, you're not gonna grow in your career or as a person. The thing is, you're cutting out a lot of time, because if you try to do it on your own, like learn everything on your own, you bang your head against the wall. That doesn't work. You pivot, bang your head on the wall, pivot, and it takes you a long time to learn. Whatever that lesson you're trying to learn, or whatever, wherever you're trying to get to at that point. But if you talk to people that are already at that point and you pick their brain and you learn from them, then that's just a shorter way to get to that result. And I think the key to that is to share information with them as well and build those relationships with those people. It's a two-way
Definitely.
street.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's very important actually. Um, Talking to people that know more than you because they know more than you, right? So it's good to learn from them.
Yep.
Um, okay, so more so on this idea of like advice and lessons, right? So how perhaps would you advise people to like maybe younger people like me to balance their long-term versus short-term goals, or like their long-term needs and wants versus the short-term needs and wants?
Yeah, that's what you got to do. I think sometimes people make these long-term goals, and I think long-term goals are really, really important. But you know you're not going to achieve those goals unless you break those goals down, and you have milestones, or you have mini goals or short-term goals that you're setting up. And you should have not just one short-term goal, but you should have stages. So like when you sit down and you think, you should be thinking about, where do I want to be, where do I want to be, and then break down how am I going to get there, and back it up that way. But then it's important to set those short-term goals and milestones that you're going to hit. And you should always know what your long-term goal is, but you should really be concentrating on that short-term goal, because you already know that if you do this short-term goal, then you do this short-term goal, and then you do this and you do that and you do this, you're eventually get to that long-term goal. But I think sometimes people get so caught up in that long-term goal, and that long-term goal could be a year or 5 years, and sometimes it's so far out there, that you get discouraged. So like when you're trying to, let's say, losing weight, for instance, because I had lost a lot of weight about a year and a half ago. you say, oh, I got to lose, got to lose 50 pounds, and if you just like, I got to lose 50, got to lose 50, got to lose 50, over time, it's going to seem overwhelming. Where if you break that down, say, I got to lose 50 pounds, I'm going to do it by this date, but by the end of this month, I need to be down 10 pounds. Next month, I need to be down 8, and da 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 da. You back it up. And then you just concentrate on your short term. So 10 pounds this month, and then you break it down and go, okay, I need to lose 2.5 pounds this week. And that's what you should really just concentrate on just this week and reward yourself when you reach that goal. Don't reward yourself with food though.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Makes sense, makes sense. Yeah, it's like I guess breaking it down to actionable items to where you're not like, oh,
Yeah.
it's too big to work on. Yeah. I mean, because people are like, if the goal is too big and they're discouraged of working on it, because like, how can I overcome this? But what you said makes a lot of sense. If you put it down to smaller items, it's more manageable.
Brian, do you know how to eat an elephant?
I don't think I know how to eat an elephant. No.
One bite at a time.
One, yeah. That's what it is. Yeah, for sure. Okay. So unless you have anything else to mention about your background, I think we can shift to the policy making side of things and your thoughts on that. So with recent administrations like tariff regime, do you have any thoughts perhaps on how it could impact people, or have you seen anything because you're in the business world, especially?
Yeah, I'm starting to see a little bit of impact with the current tariff situation. Not greatly yet. I'm worried that we will shortly, especially right now. They're talking again about raising the tariffs, and it does have me concerned about the tariffs. I think that it will hurt the economy. I think more than anything, it's in business. It's important that you can plan and you know what's happening. And I think right now it's been difficult because things change day to day, and you're not even sure what the real end result is or what they're trying to accomplish. And I think the uncertainty can sometimes be the worst, Brian.
Yeah, I see. So, like because like what with this administration, it's hard to predict what they're going to do. So it's like you think that's giving trouble for businesses because they can't plan around that.
Yeah, I think that could be an issue. I think what's kind of happening now, though, is that there's been so much talk of we're going to increase tariffs, we're going to increase tariffs, and they haven't with some people, and the threat is there. But I think that it's the administration has been moving off the tariffs. They say they're going to do it, then they move off. They say they're going to do it, they're going to move off. So again, they're saying that they're going to increase tariffs on certain countries. Europe in particular by a certain date. I think it's August 1st. I don't want to outdate this video, but I think what's happening with that is that um, I think people are starting to settle in and go, hey, maybe it's not going to actually happen. I mean, it's like anything in the world. You said that the sky's falling, and it
Yeah,
doesn't.
yeah.
After a while, you're not going to believe it, or you're not going to worry about it. So I think we might be getting to that point. But if that tariffs actually major tariffs actually do go into effect, I do think it's going to greatly affect this economy. Greatly affect this economy. I think we'll probably head to a recession.
I see. Yeah. I mean,
But
some
I'm
other
hoping it's
people.
not going to happen. I'm hoping that
Yeah,
the
for sure,
outrageous
right?
tariffs are not going to happen,
It's
and it's just
like,
a negotiation tool.
yeah. I mean, prepare for the worst, hope for the best is what some people have told me, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked to some other people, as well, and they've echoed similar sentiments to where the unpredictability is really a problem. Hold on, I need to sneeze, bless blow my nose real quick. I'll be right back.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I have terrible allergies, nowadays. I don't know why. I think it's all the dust.
I think you got a little something on your lip. I think part of the Kleenex or something.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right. So on the note of policymaking then, because you're in the business world, you have a lot of business experience. What would you tell to policymakers to see what they could do to help improve the small business and business environment generally?
Yeah, so most of the businesses I sell right now have an equity value of about 750,000 to 3 or 4 million. So the people that are buying those businesses typically get a business, acquire those businesses when they put 10% down. They get an SBA loan, Small Business Administration loan, and that's how they acquire the businesses. And I think that they need to loosen up some of the rules that they recently implemented when it comes to SBA loans. And I think if they loosened up some of those rules that they just implemented, I think it would help a lot. We're in a situation right now where 40% of small business owners in this country were born before 1964. So we have this huge wave of people on the verge of retiring and selling their businesses. And we've got to transition those businesses to the next generation, and that's extremely important. But the only way we're going to be able to do that is if the SBA lending continues to be, a good option. Again, these new rules that they just implemented a couple months ago, I think they're making it tighter, and they're making it tighter because there has been an increase in defaults on SBA loans in the last couple of years, like a major increase in default in SBA loans. But those defaults are mainly coming from what's called fintech, and those fintechs are loans that people can apply for online, and they're smaller loans. They're usually for like 50 or $100,000, and they're meant more for situations where people don't have as much capital, and maybe they don't have the best credit score, and that kind of a thing. And it's easier to get those loans. And obviously that's why lenders usually put these strict rules in place, is to prevent loans from defaulting. And I think they got too aggressive with the fintech. That's what's increasing the default range, not the space that we're working in with SBA loans. We are on the verge in this country of seeing the greatest transfer of personal financial wealth the world has ever seen. And we've got to make sure that as a country, we're able to get these assets, including the sale of businesses, again to the next generation.
Yeah, definitely. Again, you're echoing a lot of the stuff that I've heard before with other people. So I think there's a trend here to where people said for small businesses, it's having access to capital, just simply getting cash on hand, and with the regulations, you want to make it easier, not more difficult for them to survive and get to get the resources they need.